This is the Tony Doe Podcast.
Hello and welcome again to the Tony Doe Podcast. Let's get to meet my guest.
Rex Uberfresh is a singer, songwriter, broadcaster, voice actor, and all-round creative. I love everything that has to do with creating, and I love to talk. I love to cut up stuff. I really like music. I love mashing audio together to, create unique sounds, to tell stories. I enjoy what I do, especially in a broadcast media environment. So that's about it.
Why radio?
Well, radio for me is a very intimate platform. I listened to radio growing up. My big brother put me on radio in terms of he was always playing radio every time. My parents, they used to watch more of TV, and maybe when there's no power in the house, I could hear my dad, on his radio listening to World Service, BBC, I think, or Voice of America, one of those. And from time to time, I never really got interested in the old radio of back in the day. But when independent radio came into Nigeria, the likes of Ray Power, Rhythm, I fell in love with radio. I loved the voices, the characters, the music, everything, the games. It was just so beautiful, having to listen to people you don't know and bond with them and get a kind of relationship with them. So that's how I fell in love with radio, basically. But getting on radio, because I actually first started out really chasing music. I was writing music from university level, and I put out an album in the university. Not really put it out. I recorded an album, which we never actually released. And I joined a group and I put out music. So basically, I've been a studio rat for as long as I can remember, say 2006, thereabouts. And for me, creating stuff just gives me joy, the potential it has and how sometimes it changes people's lives. So from the music thingy, I heard about an opportunity on the radio, and I was like, music, half the time after recording, I am not really doing much else with my time. So I decided to, get a 9 to 5 at a federal radio station, a public radio station. And, from there, I had to learn the ropes and do a lot of things. And I started to understand how powerful radio can be. So that's why I'm doing radio, because I have a chance to inform the people, to have conversations with people from all walks of life and, generally make a difference.
Who would you say are your biggest influences on radio?
Okay, among a couple of people I admired on radio, while growing up, was JJ the Mechadon, Ike Osakio-Dua, aka Wild Child. I love Dan Foster, God rest his soul. Also, Rick Dees. I listen to Rick Dees a lot. PJ Butter as well. And I'm trying to think. There was a few. Chemistry, back in the day of Rhythm. I loved her a lot. I loved her voice and, how she, spoke about stuff. So basically, those are the people I grew up listening to and admired a lot.
Talk to me about your radio journey, how it started and how it's going so far.
So I started radio at FRCN, Broadcasting House, Ikoyi. And that's where I started. I actually got into the Federal Radio Corporation as an IT guy. I was in the tech room, solving problems with people's PCs, because I actually studied computer science in the university. But it was quite boring because there wasn't a lot to do, and you know how it is, the public sector, not very well funded. So PCs were always breaking down, not enough resources to replace or to, improve on the technology. So we're just basically repairmen. So I got a bit tired of that assignment, and there was an opening at the radio station Metro at the time, 97.7. And I went to audition where I failed woefully because I didn't have any experience at all. But my mom works there as well. So she was able to prevail on them to, just let me understudy. So that's how I started to understudy. And I started to do voiceovers and recorded programs. Basically, nobody let me go on the air, and I was always in the studio listening to the guys who knew how to do it, and they were giving me tips. People like Michael Diali, Moses Humphrey, Israel Eferobor, a whole lot of people, Chris Elems as well. These were people who I understudied. I was in the studio when they were doing their bits, and so I had to know why things were done the way they were done, studio etiquettes, things like that. Then I got a chance to be on the radio, I think during the night shift, and I started to read news. And that was after I went for broadcast training. And after that, I came back and I started to try my hands on going on air. It was scary the first time, always being conscious of your words and not making mistakes and all of that. But that's how I got on radio. And from there, I went to a private station because I felt like the public sector, especially in the radio industry, kind of limits you, especially with modern tech and, other ways of doing things, So I really love what I learned, the foundation, the rudiments of broadcasting and the basics, really. And I really appreciate my time there. But I needed something more. I wanted to know what else was available, how else to do this job. And so I got into radio. I went to Enugu Urban Radio. I was there for about a year or so, almost a year. And I got an offer with another new station open up in Asaba. And so I went to Asaba. And so I've been there, doing my thing.
What's a typical day like for you on your show on radio?
A typical day on my shift. Let me see. Okay, I used to do the evening shift at one time. When I started on Bridge Radio, I was doing the evening shift. So that was crazy. It was fun. It was drive time. It was young. It was youthful. Myself and my co-presenter, we used to switch who's at the control board. So that's the console. And so maybe on Mondays I'm there, on Tuesdays I'm there, because we had different musical styles and we wanted to switch up and keep the show interesting. We used to come up with topics, anything that would get people talking. Very, very outlandish stuff sometimes. So it's basically a whole lot of banter, music, teasing, people, the callers, each other, talking about stuff that people probably don't have enough idea about and stuff like that. So it was cool. Then lately I'm on the breakfast show right now, and it's a whole lot of politics. So that shift was a bit tough for me because I had to start to dig into what's going on, current affairs, the news. I'm always surfing the news and the internet and stuff like that. So that's what my typical day is on my show. We do newspaper headlines, and then we do the political talk show, which is always crazy because I'm always searching for some of the headlines that gets people to react. And also get guests on the show to help us put some context to what's going on. And so that's my typical day on radio. And then at the later part of the breakfast show, I get to play tons of music and talk about them, talk about artists, and also check in with the entertainment scene, what's going on. So that's basically a typical day on my show.
How do you spot a good radio talent?
Okay, so here's how I spot good radio talent. They're so hard to come across these days, but typically someone who is passionate, someone who is interested about what's going on around them, someone who has an opinion about a lot of things, who's ready to research and can articulate properly. I feel basically a lot of things can be learned on the job. But first of all, one good thing is when you find people who are able to articulate their thoughts properly, who are a bit, creative in how they convey the information that they have. Some of these they can learn on the job, but it just has to be there. I just need to be able to see that there's something that this person has to offer, especially a passion for wanting to even be a communicator, be someone on the other side of the microphone, talking to people, and with a lot of experience in on the job, I see that sometimes people who have the most passion find a way to communicate, even if it's not how we expect them to, or how the profession, basically in quotes, has tailored things down that, this is how this person should sound, or this is how people should sound on the radio. Sometimes those things don't work. So the person needs to be very informed, very passionate about the job, and has something to say. basically that's makes good radio. So I tend to mix it up, look for people who are articulate, but most importantly, someone who is passionate about communicating with people, about, learning about what's going on around them, having an opinion, an informed opinion, underline the word informed, about stuff.
How do you think radio stays relevant in the face of streaming services and podcasts?
Now, this is a big issue, but I think it can play it can play to the advantage of radio.
How so?
So we have a lot of streaming services. We have podcasts. Now, for music, I know that a lot of people get the music on demand. So for radio, especially we on radio, we have to be current enough. We have to play what people already have started streaming. So when we can get exclusives, it makes it better for the radio station, right? And all of those hypes that our artist drops, you don't get that on the streaming services. It adds color to what you're doing. But most importantly, we have to be ahead of the game. We have to be able to get the songs possibly before they're released on streaming services. That's how radio stays relevant. For podcasts, I think that that's another way radio is pivoting, to the podcast scene. And when internet penetration gets even better and deeper in this parts of the world, perhaps more people will be listening to podcasts. But there's something radio has that podcast scene may need to get to, or there might be a convergence of radio and podcasts, so to speak. It's the liveness, live nature of podcasts or live nature of radio. And the fact that, you can get a feedback, that aspect is also important. So I know there's some people who are doing that already with the podcast, but I think that it's kind of like the future of radio in a way, but as we speak, radio penetrates the deepest, most rural parts. So it's going to take a long time to phase radio out. And I don't think we can ever phase radio out. I think radio is going to develop and merge with, the podcast scene, the internet, live streams, and all of that is all going to be a part of radio.
What do you think about podcasts?
I think podcasts are very interesting. I think it's more of niche radio, radio getting more stylized, more free, fun. You can get a couple of people in the studio, and even the visual aspect of the podcast are also very interesting. It's topic specific, sometimes, the podcast, depending on what kind of podcast you're listening to. I think I like it. The quality is good. You can find it online. So it's not limited to, where you are in the world. Although radio also streams online, but this podcast, most times, you find a niche that you love and sorts of topics that you love listening to, and you can find a podcast on that. So I think it's beautiful. I love listening to podcasts.
In light of recent events like the NSAS movement and, of course, the Twitter ban, what's your view on the regulatory methods of the NBC?
On the issue of the NBC as a regulatory agency, they've been doing well, trying to keep broadcast stations to broadcast within the ambits of the NBC code, which is our rule book. Because a lot of stations are coming up, some of them not so experienced or not having experienced management, and they need this guidance. So the NBC from time to time has to, send warnings and, put out publications just to guide, the broadcast industry, because the country right now is in a state where tensions are high. Emotions are high. The country is sort of divided along, political lines, religious, ethnic lines, and things like that. And some stations are playing into that and further causing harm without knowing, But talking about media censorship, a lot of the things that the NBC has put out in the face of the NSAS movement, also with the Twitter ban as well, and, several other issues, the posturing of the NBC seems to be on the side of government. And that's not strange, because it is a National Broadcasting Commission. It was set up by an act, by this country. And most times, you find that the government has a say. The Minister of Information has a whole lot of influence. And the Minister of Information can be said to be independent because he belongs to the administration. So we need to get to a point where, we can help the NBC, or the NBC needs to understand that there needs to be some sort of independence. They need to be able to be objective. So while they regulate what's happening, I understand the concerns of the government. People are going on air with all sorts of things that are not facts and are capable of causing more divisions and problems in the country. But the government also has its own role to play, and the radio stations shouldn't be gagged in speaking truth to power. So that's what I feel the NBC's regulation is bordering on, possibly gagging the media in a way. So media personnel or broadcast outfits need to be more careful and need to be objective in their reportage, in how they put issues and matters across. But then again, they should not be afraid to speak the truth. And I don't think the NBC wants to keep broadcast outfits from speaking the truth. But however they go about it could seem otherwise. So that's why they also need to do things carefully and transparently, objectively as well, so that the industry will be better for it.
How do you deal with a bad day at work?
A bad day at work is something that sometimes can be few and far in between, depending on where you work. Sometimes it can be maybe every other day. But for me, dealing with a bad day at work, I don't get too many of those because I'm a very cheerful guy, optimistic. I don't like to bother about stuff for too long. But being in management, people will definitely give you bad days at work, especially when you get the heat because somebody else didn't do their job. So, but I don't let that affect my presentation, because I was taught the golden rule: leave your baggages out the studio door. When you get in there, do what you need to do. So I have this way of just trying to forget about whatever it is that's making me upset when I have a bad day at work. And what else? I listen to music. Music has a way of calming me down. And eating food. Yes, snacking, snacking on chocolates, local delicacy, anything. So that helps me get my mind off stuff.
Who are your top 5 Afrobeats acts and why?
Top 5 favorite Afrobeats acts. I'd say I like Burna Boy, Davido, Tenny. Who else? Let me see. That's 3. I also like Wizkid and Tems. That's if you can call Tems Afrobeat. Yes, I think she's Afrobeat. Okay. Yeah. So those 5, and I like them because of what they bring to the table. They're quite different, even though a genre of or a sound right now might be popping, like say Amapiano. But these acts, all of them I've mentioned, if they jump on it, it will sound different. They have what they bring to the table. Tenny is a fantastic songwriter and vocalist, so I really like her freedom of expression. She just expresses herself, makes it so natural. David is very gritty. His voice texture is different, and he finds a way to bury or to bring life rather to a song, even if he doesn't write it. So I appreciate about him. And he goes out seeking very interestingly written songs and he delivers them. So that's why I like Davido. Wizkid, on the other hand, he's just super talented. And I say he's one of these artists that is, full of grace, and he's able to bring something different. Sometimes it sounds so effortless that you wonder where the talent is. What's he really saying? But I appreciate his vocal texture, his delivery on songs, and the beats he picks. I think that's what makes Wizkid sound very, very different. And he has, over the years, morphed or grown, so his sound has, shifted, has bended, and it's really interesting to see what he has, become. Who else? Tems is just amazing. She's gritty. She has that thing that we all love about Rihanna. She has sweet vocals. She sounds good on records. And she's also very poetic in her approach to topics such as heartbreak, love, and things like that. And who else? Burna Boy, the African giant, he's amazing as well. I love the fact that, when he came on the scene, he showed us his range in terms of the kind of genres of music that he mastered, both R&B, raga, and as well as rap. You can just sense all of that inside of him. Then Afrobeats, so that's four genres, maybe not necessarily rapping, but you can tell from the way he writes his song that he's sort of a rapper. You can feel the rhythm and you can feel the poetry. So I think being able to master all these genres makes you a great artist, and it has shown over time. So those are my top 5 Afrobeats acts and why I love them.
What are your top 5 Afrobeat songs at the moment?
Okay, my top 5 Afrobeat songs at the moment. Funnily enough, it might not be all from these artists I mentioned earlier, but I'm feeling Lil J and SARS, Mona Lisa. I'm feeling that track. I also like Essence with Wizkid and the Justin Bieber version. I like that a lot. Wizkid and Thames. So I think that's 2 of my artists on the song. I am also feeling Buju at the moment. He has a song called Testimony. I think I like that. Yes, and so that's 3 of them. I also like Tenny's album. I like her new album. But for me, one of the standout songs there is Hustle. Yes, I like Hustle by Tenny. And last Afrobeat song that I'm feeling at the moment is Fireboy. Yes, he has this new song where he's singing like Wande Cole. I can't even tell if Wande Cole is on the track or if it's just him, but it's a song called I'm trying to remember the name. It starts with a P. Yeah, that's the song. His new song. I forget the title now. Yeah, so those are the top 5 songs I'm feeling right now.
What won't you ever eat, no matter how hungry you get?
First of all, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm a foodie. I love food. There's almost nothing I can't eat except it's slimy and it's not cooked. Yes, that's how I'll put it. But every other thing that is cooked, yeah. And if it's non-African, I'm very wary about, other dishes, from other places. So I can't say I can eat everything. But basically, if it has taste, it has some spicing in it, it's hot, I think I can just eat it. But if you say won't I ever try, because I like to try stuff, but what won't I ever eat? Maybe sushi, because it's not always so cooked. But hey, you never know.
If Rex had superpowers, what would they be and how would you use them?
If I had superpowers, I would love to be able to time travel. I'd really love that. I'd love to be able to time travel because I'll be able to go back in time and learn stuff. The knowledge might haunt me, knowing what's going to happen in the future and all of that, but time travel, I don't want to know everything. I want to be able to, jump in and find out what happened in the past, and also use that to determine what's going to happen in the future, so being able to time travel and just, vacationing in a different time setting. I think that would be super interesting. So yeah, that's a superpower I would like to have.
What legacy does Rex Uberfresh want to leave behind?
I would love to leave a legacy of a guy who created something different for the generation after, because I've been through a lot of industries. I've done music, I've done radio as well, and currently I'm pivoting into multimedia production, talking about movies, soundtracks and stuff like that. So I want to be able to be known as someone who was able to break boundaries, and not be in a box. To be able to uplift young, talented people, because that's something else I want to do. Give people the opportunity to, show what skills they have, especially if they're creative skills. Create a platform where, I can mentor people. So I want to be known as that guy who who gave what he had so that the future can prosper.
My guest has been Rex Uber Fresh. It's been a pleasure having you, bro.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this, please get someone else to listen to it as well. If you'd like to support, the links are in the show notes. Who produced the theme music, by the way?
I'm pretty sure it's Teckzilla.